Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Shri Hanuma Bhima Madhvantarkata Ramakrishna Vedavyasatmaka Lakshmi Hayagrivaya Namaha. Namaskara of Srinivasan Pranesh to all Sajjanas. We are going through a series of discourses under the title Vedas and Unbiased View. And in the series, we are now in the 12th part or the 12th episode. So far, we have gone through several things, especially a lot from Pramana Paddhati. So initially, we started with a Bhagavad Gita shloka where Shri Krishna says, truth is always one only, whereas the lies that are not in line with the Pramanas can be infinite. So with regards to testing of the truth with the Pramanas, we started with Pramana Samanya Lakshana. We discussed on what is meant by true cognition or true knowledge, which is nothing but Kevala Pramana. We also discussed about Ayatartha Jnana, that is doubt and error. We went through how other philosophies opine about these things and how Madhva philosophy refuted them very sensibly. And then to understand how a philosophy have to be seen with respect to the Pramanas, to know whether something is saying the truth or untruth or the lies. So we picked two philosophies. One is the Dvaita philosophy, and we saw how the Dvaita philosophy is fitting in line with the Pramanas. That is the instruments of the knowledge, which is called Anupramana, which is nothing but Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Agama. So we went through how Dvaita philosophy propounded by Sri Madhvacharya is in line with the Pramanas, and we also went through how untrue philosophy is unfitting in line with the Pramanas, how it is unfitting with the Pramanas. So we picked Advaita philosophy as well, and we went through very briefly on how that is unfitting with respect to the Pramanas. So perception, inference, and Agama are the three means of knowledge to find the truth. So truth, when we had a basic logic where truth, when tested with all these three, shall be aligned, means the results shall be aligned. In case if something that is the truth or the object of knowledge is beyond the comprehension or beyond the scope of certain things, then in that case obviously the results will not be aligned, because say for example, if we take dharma adharma, that cannot be perceived actually, so it is totally out of scope of perception. So there we cannot expect that perception, inference, and Vedas all should be aligned. Whereas in case of differences, for example, you say the differences between two objects or between two people. So when we say the difference is real, that can be aligned actually in line with the perception, inference, and Vedas as well. So when something is beyond the scope of one of the means of knowledge, then that can be ignored. So in that way, Vedas have the glory of letting us know or providing true knowledge about the things that can't be perceived, like say for example, dharma adharma, papa punya, God, and so many things that cannot be perceived have to be essentially known through Vedas only. So this is the basic logic or basic common sense, that when we say there are three means to know the truth, then all three shall be aligned. In case the truth is beyond scope of something, we say there is only one way to know the truth, or there are two ways to know the truth, then that two ways shall be aligned. or we have to, uh, we have to completely trust on Vedas. We have to take Vedas as pramana. Then we went through the concept, like when an untrue philosophy is propounded, and the propounders somehow try to prove that they are right, then they try to bend the truth to suit what they say. So in that way, we went through that the Vedas were divided by Advaitins as the statements or the verses that are having philosophical importance, and the statements that are not important philosophically, Amukhya, and can be ignored. So in that case, we went through how this will backfire to them. So if you ignore certain portion of the Vedas, then all the opponents will take the similar stand, and literally wherever the Vedas are aligned with their thoughts, then they will say that is philosophical, and ignore the rest as non-philosophical. So nobody would be able to establish their philosophy based on the Vedas, which is just an act of cutting the Vedas at its root as pramana. The Vedas are not affected; they are pramana only, because Vedas are eternal, and they really say what they want to say. The problem is in the misinterpretation. So what I am trying to say is, Vedas as pramana cannot be affected in reality, but the problem is when such a stand is taken, then the philosophy or the interpretation of the Vedas cannot be established. So in that way, the whole Vedas shall be accepted as Pramanas in first place. Otherwise, if we proceed to divide the Vedas into philosophical, non-philosophical, then it is like cutting one's own head with a sword themselves. Because their philosophy means the person who divides the Vedas, their own philosophy is also going to get affected because of such divisions. So such cannot be done. Then when we are questioned on how we will deal with the contradictory statements in the Vedas, and we proceeded to say, based on Madhva philosophical debates, that there is no real controversy. It is all about the interpretations. So there are statements which can be interpreted only in one way, which is Niravakasha, and there are statements which can be interpreted in multiple ways, which is Savakasha Shruti. So when we have the Niravakasha meaning fixed, and when we divert the meaning of Savakasha Shrutis to match in line with the Niravakasha Shruti, then the conflict can be easily solved. And that is the truth as well. This is not some tactics to somehow prove that Vedas does not contradict. So Vedas really do not contradict. They don't have contradicting statements within Vedas. So the whole Vedas can be accepted as pramanas. So for those who don't understand Vedas properly and keep saying that there are contradicting statements in the Vedas, then we say this method of diverting the Shavakasha Shruti meanings to match in line with the Niravakasha Shruti. So this much we have seen so far. So now coming into the instruments of knowledge into bit detail. The whole series is very brief from the granthas actually. Like say for example, let us take Pramana Paddhati. Then the Pramana Paddhati is not explained in whole, similar to a classroom session. So it is given in very brief, based on what is required for this topic. So in that way, let us get into a little detail of these instruments of knowledge. So we said pratyaksha or perception is defined as the defectless contact between the senses and the object of knowledge. So the contact has to be defectless. The senses have to be defectless. So we have to observe the word defectless in the definition. So that is what is the definition for perception or pratyaksha. Now, this pratyaksha is limited to our sense, because when we say pratyaksha is what we perceive, that means we perceive something through our senses. So that is limited to the senses, and that is why it is a sensual perception. That means when we say the definition as defectless contact, why do we say so in particular? That means that there could be possible defects in perception, which may be leading to a doubt or an erroneous knowledge. That is the ayatartha jnana. So let us go through the possible defects in pratyaksha. So the first thing, all these are defined in Pramana Paddhati itself, and suitable examples also are given in the Pramana Paddhati and its Tippani, that is the notes given by later acharyas. So I am going to explain with the help of those only. So the first possible defect is ati duratva. That means long distance. Due to long distance, we may not be able to perceive something, or we may have some error in perception as well. The example given is mountains like Meru, or let us take Himalayas for example, and I am perceiving it from Chennai. So I'm not able to perceive it because my senses are very, very limited. I can see only to certain distance, and I cannot go beyond that. So obviously, ati duratva, or the long distance, will not help in perception. That is considered as a defect in perception. And we can give so many examples like this. So there may be something appearing in the sky like a bird. So because of a long distance, we may even think that it is a bird or something, but it is not bird in real case. So like this, we can give lot of examples. So ati duratva, long distance, is considered as a defect in pratyaksha. And ati samipya, that means too close to the eyes. Because of its too closeness to the eyes, it cannot be perceived. So what example can we give? Example, eyelids. So the eyelids are just present, covering our eye, but we will not be able to see the eyelids, right? So this is ati samipya. So we can see in the mirror, that is a different case. But even when we see in the mirror, the perception is not proper, because the left eye appears on the right and the right eye appears on the left, and it is not perceived as such. So again, based on some inference only, we think that the mirror is showing in opposite, and then understand it in the right way. So let us forget the mirror time being. So the ati samipya means because of too much of closeness, something cannot be perceived. So the example is eyelids. Eyelid example is given in the scripture itself. So ati duratva, due to long distance, we are unable to perceive something that will not be covered in the perception. So the example given is Meru mountain. And ati samipya, that means because of too much of closeness to the perceiver, the person is not able to perceive. The example given is eyelids. And then saukshmya, that means sukshma. We use the word sukshma. So something which is a very sukshma form, or very tiny or minute, we can say. So because of this saukshmya, there could be possible defects in perception. Example given by our ancestors is a very thin hair which is in front of the eyes, and because of its thinness, it is so tiny and minute, so somebody is unable to perceive the hair. So this is a defect in perception, or something that presents us the limit of our senses, where our senses does not work properly and does not give us the real true cognition. So we can give several examples for this, right? We can say virus, bacteria, and so many things that we are not able to perceive because of its saukshmya, because it being very in a very sukshma form, or tiny or minute. Then vyavadana, that is the obstructions to perceive. Say for example, one person stands on one side of the wall. Assume there is a wall. So one person stands on one side of the wall, and there is a pot placed on the other side of the wall. So now the person is not able to perceive the pot because there is some obstruction in front of him. So there, the perception, a proper perception or a true cognition is not possible. So this vyavadana is considered as one of the defects in pratyaksha. Then the fifth one is samana dravya abhigata. That means the defects occurring because of mixing of the similar substances, where you cannot divide and see what is what. Say, for example, water mixed in milk. So the business people who sell milk do it frequently nowadays because of the business interests, the interest in profit. The people don't mind to cheat other people. They don't follow dharma in this Kali Yuga. So water is mixed with milk. So once the water is mixed with milk, we would not be able to separate it because they are samana dravya. So they mix well with each other, and then we cannot identify it. People say that there were swans in the olden days, Anna Pakshi, which can clearly segregate the milk and the water. That is some exclusive, exceptional ability given by God to some creatures. But let us see it from the human perspective. Once the water is mixed with milk, we will not be able to perceive clearly on where is the water. Everything will appear like milk to us, and we cannot segregate it. Even when we use instruments like lactometer or something, still we can identify that something has been mixed. When we measure the density of the milk, we have a standard density. So when we measure, if the density is very very less, then we can infer that the water has been mixed with the milk, but still we would not be able to perceive the milk and water separately. Those are mixed and they appear same to us. Water remains separate, milk remains separate inside, but they are mixed and we are unable to perceive it. So this is a defect in perception, limitation of perception, where we are unable to clearly differentiate between the two. So this is a fifth type. And the sixth type is anabhivyaktatvam. That means abhivyakta means being manifested. So this category is anabhivyaktatvam, means being non-manifested. That is, something is present, but it is not manifested due to some reason, and we are not able to perceive it. So this is considered as a defect in perception. So the example that can be given is a pot placed in the darkness. Assume we are in a dark room and there is a pot placed in front of us. So despite the pot being in front of us, the pot is not getting manifested. We are not able to perceive it because of the absence of light. So this is one type. And the seventh type or seventh defect is sadrushya. That means sadrushya means a similarity, we can say. So for example, we went through the seashell and silver example, in which in the presence of bright light or something, so the seashell appears like silver because of the shininess or some kind of similarity in the attribute between the seashell and the silver. Likewise, for example, let us take snake and rope. So when we go through a road in darkness, or when there is no proper light or something, or there is some defect in the eye, then we feel like a snake is lying on the road. But when we go close to the snake and examine it, then we understand that it is not snake at all, but rope. That there is some kind of similarity in attribute between the snake and the rope, sadrushya, that is being lengthy and being lying bent. So that appears like a snake to us, but it is not really a snake, which is superseded by the subsequent experience that it is rope. And thereafter, the experience does not change. So the cognition of the rope is the true cognition. When there is true cognition or true knowledge, that will never change, because that is the truth will never change. Whereas something that is perceived as superimposed on the truth, that will change. The experience will change. So we ourselves, when we try to go near, we understand that what I perceived was not snake, and it is a rope. So once we get the experience that what we perceived is a rope, then it is the true cognition or true knowledge, and it does not change. Similarly, in case of seashell and silver, from a distance, when we perceive it, we see silver there. But when we go close to it and examine, then we find that it is not a silver, but it is a seashell. Then we do not get a different experience in the same place. That is, we don't again get an experience that it is not a seashell and it is something else. So we have to understand that when the truth is cognized, when there is true cognition or true knowledge, then the experience will never change. It will remain the same with respect to the space and time where it is perceived. Whereas something is untrue or superimposed, then we will come to know from our immediate experience that what I perceived was erroneous and it is not the true perception at all. So based on this only, when we discussed about the inference, we said in our previous episodes that Advaita does not stand while testing with respect to these pramanas, because the inference that they make, that is, all that is perceived is mithya. If that is truth, then such kind of superimposing experience should happen in every perception, and that is not happening in our real life, because there are clear perceptions like perceiving a pot, perceiving a cloth, perceiving a human. So where there is no doubt at all whether it is a and there is no experience that supersedes this experience. Nowhere we can see that somebody perceived a pot and later they got an experience that it is not a pot. Such a situation is not really seen in this world. And where silver is perceived as superimposed on means while perceiving, we don't understand that is a superimposition. From the subsequent experience only we understood that what we perceived was superimposed. That is fine. But such instances, from the subsequent immediate true perception, the lies vanish, the superimposition vanishes, and we get the knowledge of the truth. So in such cases, there are, if you take perception as a whole, then the inference of Advaitins will not stand, because there are contradicting experiences where we clearly perceive a pot, cloth, and similar things, and the experience subsequent, there is no subsequent experience to prove that these are wrong. Whereas when you come to the case of seashell and silver, we get subsequent true cognition or true experience, which proves that the silver cognized was unreal silver and it was an erroneous perception. So when we get into the inference of Advaitins, so there is no presence of similar experience in every instance, and there are contradicting experiences to what they cite. So that way we proved that the inference of Advaitins is not right with respect to the perception. So when they question back that what is the Advaita philosophy standpoint in this, because they may put the same charge on Dvaitavadins. They may say that whatever you perceive is not a true cognition always. It is not a clear perception always, because when you perceive pot, you perceive cloth, you are showing so many examples that the perceptions are crystal clear. But still, as contradicting experiences, you people also perceive silver on seashell sometimes. So is that not a presence of contradicting evidence that disproves your inference? So if such question arises from Advaitins, then we say that it is not so, because we say perception is pramana. And what is perception? The defectless contact between the sense organs and the object of knowledge is called perception. So we have to note the word defectless. And this perceptions, that is the defectless perceptions, to give us the repeated experience of crystal clear perception of the objects. And that is happening. We pot, cloth, humans, animals, birds, a crow, an eagle. We can show several examples where we have clear, very clear, crystal clear perceptions. So the repeated experience condition supports Dvaita philosophy. And if we speak about the contradicting experience, the contradicting experiences with respect to Dvaita inference and the support from perception are really absent. That means there is no contradicting experience. So citing the silver and seashell as example to disprove the inference of Dvaita philosophy is not right, because we call this similarity or sadrushya as as a defect in perception. It is not a perception. Where we have to show the repeated experience, where from we have to show the contradicting experience, it is from the perception. So if we see the definition of perception, it is a defectless contact between the senses and the objects. So there is repeated experience of the differences to show that the difference is real through perception by perceiving several things in a crystal clear way. And there is absence of contradicting experience in real perception. If others try to prove that the Dvaita inference is not right because there are experiences like silver and seashell, then that such objection has no place. Such objection is not valid at all, because this seashell and silver example, so that only tells us about the erroneous perception and the subsequent experience proving that it was erroneous. So in this case, it is not a perception at all. So we cannot call these things as the contradicting experience, because the contradicting experience or the contradicting knowledge have to be presented from the perception itself. Only then the inference will fail. But in this case, citing some example which does not fall under the category of perception at all is not right. So such an objection is not valid, and it will not stand. It cannot disprove anything. So we can very clearly say that the inference of Dvaita and the perception supporting the inference of Dvaita philosophy, that the differences are real, is true and it is aligned. And these, apart from these two means, such a thought or philosophy is aligned with the Vedas also. So all the three means of knowledge gets aligned. So based on this, we can come to the conclusion that Dvaita philosophy speaks the truth. Whereas when we go with Advaita philosophy, so when we take their inference, then it is not supported by perception because of the absence of repeated experiences in the example cited, and also the presence of contradicting experience. And Vedas are also not in support. They take support from Vedas based on their misinterpretations only, and Vedas really do not support their philosophy. So this way we have to know how to test something, or how something is proved true in line with the instruments of knowledge or the anupramana. So now we went through the perception and the definition of perception, and we went into a bit detail of what are all the possible defects in the perception as given by Sri Tikacharyaru, and some examples from Sri Vedesha Tirtharu in his notes or tippani. So with this, let us conclude this 12th part, and in the 13th, I mean in the subsequent parts, we will be going through similar possible defects in inference and agama as well. And then let us get into the glory of Vedas. We will be starting from the Charuvaka Vada, that is the materialists who does not believe in Vedas, who does not believe in anything beyond what they perceive. So let us see how they are countered and criticized by the philosophers. So that will be our starting point. So initially the Charuvakas who does not believe in Vedas, and how they are criticized, and how the Dvaita Paksha side is proven that Vedas are essential and the authority. Then we will discuss about Buddhism, Jainism views on the Vedas, how they are countered by the Madhva Siddhanta Vadins, and we will proceed into logically reasoning or reason or to prove that Vedas are authority. They are eternal. They are authority because they are eternal. So the Vedas are eternal. Vedas are the authority. That way we will be establishing the means establishing in the sense it has been already established by our philosophers. We are going to see that on how those got established. So that is what we will be discussing. So with that, let me conclude this 12th part. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.